Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on The Walking Dead Season 11 Episode 12. As is the norm with all my videos, I won't be holding back on any spoilers, so please do keep that in mind. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Eugene Porter must be the only guy who can get catfished by a girl and then immediately end up with a hotter girl. What an absolute player.
Player hater, player hater, player hater.
So yes, Eugene and Max spend some much needed time with one another in this episode. Initially, Eugene kind of freaks out when Max tries to talk to him because I guess at that point in time his head was such a mess and he just runs off. But come the end of the episode, he does visit her apartment and does apologise and tries to get things back on track. Max, however, is pissed with Eugene and she's annoyed at him for not knowing that Shira wasn't her, which I feel is very harsh for two reasons. Number one, most viewers didn't even know that Shira wasn't the real Stephanie, except for me because I'm a genius. And reason number two, Eugene didn't know what she looked like. So how was he supposed to know that Shira wasn't who she said she was, you know? From Eugene's point of view, he was talking to someone on the radio who was called Stephanie. He met someone called Stephanie at the same meeting place, which he had arranged to meet her. How was he supposed to know any different? Max even says this episode that when she saw them two together, she was shocked that this lady was using her words and sounded like her. So, and using the same phrases that she used with Eugene on the radio. So you can't really blame the guy. I mean, if Max had said to Eugene over the radio, oh, by the way, Eugene, I'm black, then Eugene, alarm bells would have raised when he met a white girl claiming to be Stephanie. It's not as if Eugene had Tinder. He didn't see the pictures of her. So I just think this is very harsh. I don't think you can really blame Eugene for this. You've got to cut the guy some slack. Like, I get that Max is upset, though, because, she's hurt at seeing this guy who she felt she had a connection with be with someone else and not be able to tell the difference and not tell that wasn't her. But I don't think you can really blame Eugene for this. Max does eventually calm down, though, and by the end of the episode, these two end things on good terms. They're not together as boyfriend and girlfriend, but it looks like it's going to be heading that way because they do flirt a bit. They flirt whilst Eugene is talking about his manuscript about a dude stopping a nuke. It's very, very strange flirting, but it's kind of cute. And yeah, these two are obviously meant to be with one another and, they eventually will get together. Whilst I'm on the subject of Eugene and hot women, I also liked the conversation that Eugene had with Rosita this episode. It was a nice throwback to season 5 because Eugene apologises for lying to her, with his whole I'm a scientist shtick that he did in season 5. And Rosita says, oh, it doesn't matter because, you lying to us, it resulted in us going on a journey and we eventually ended up at Alexandria. And it's a clear parallel here to the conversation that Eugene had with Hornsby last episode when Hornsby said, oh, it doesn't matter that I lied because you ended up at the Commonwealth and, your people ended up safe and they got fed and they ended up in a new home. So I didn't think of that connection in the previous episode. So it is nice that they brought it up this week. And yeah, when you think about it, it does kind of feel like Eugene getting screwed over with the whole Shira situation was just karma coming back to bite him in the arse. He did exactly the same thing to Rosita and did the same thing to Abraham. And I remember him not being apologetic either. I remember him saying, oh, I'm more intelligent than you. I'm not sorry. So you could argue that maybe he deserved this after what he's done. I do appreciate that Eugene also didn't tell Rosita what actually happened with Shira. Instead, he just said, oh, she dumped me, because he knows that if he told Rosita what happened, Rosita would have, jumped to help him because he's her friend. She's his friend. So she would immediately go to help him and get involved with the entire mess. And, from the conversation they have this episode, Rosita kind of makes out that she's kind of happy at the Commonwealth and he doesn't want her to get involved with all this kind of shit. He wants her to be happy, live her life, and I kind of respect that. He's being a good friend. Let's move on from Eugene and talk about the rest of the episode, with the majority of it focusing on Pamela as she goes on some kind of tour of the communities. She goes on a tour of Alexandria, Oceanside and Hilltop. The tour begins at Alexandria and we get another nice season 5 throwback where she finds this picture of Deanna and Reg Monroe in one of the houses. Turns out she knows these two. And yeah, I didn't really think much of Deanna when I first watched season 5 and 6. I still don't like the fact that she covered for Jesse's asshole husband, but, thinking back on it now, she was a pretty decent person. She was a nice lady. She did treat Rick and his crew really well. Yeah, she's just all round a decent lady. I did find it weird that there was a lot of talk about being a leader and leadership in this episode, but no one decided to mention Rick. Daryl was questioned by Mercer as to whether he was a leader at Alexandria, and Daryl says, yeah, something like that. And you think Daryl would say, oh yeah, Rick was in charge, seeing as, Rick had such a huge impact on his life, but he doesn't mention him. And then later on in the episode, Pamela and Maggie are spending some time together. And then Maggie says, oh, I learned everything I know about leadership through Deanna. And I was thinking, did you? Really? Like, I know she worked under Deanna when she arrived at Alexandria, but I didn't think Deanna would have had such a big impact on her life. It definitely didn't seem that way, If anything, I'd say that even Jesus taught her more about leadership than Deanna did, because Jesus told her how things really worked at the Hilltop, but he doesn't get a mention either. So it does seem strange. It does seem like the show is trying to kind of retroactively, have these characters say, oh yeah, Deanna, she was such a big impact on my life. Deanna was great. Deanna did this. And I was kind of thinking, well, I didn't get that impression when I was watching season 5 and 6 myself, but there you go. Anyway, Pamela's trip to Alexandria is cut short when a walker enters the facility and enters through the gates, and she's very unimpressed with that, and she then decides to move on to Oceanside. And ladies and gentlemen, guess who we don't see at Oceanside? Cindy. Where the hell is Cindy? Angela Kang, what the fuck are you doing? Where is she? Fucking disgrace. Pamela wants to sign some kind of non-aggression pact with all these communities, and Alexandria agree to it, but Oceanside reject it. Oceanside say that Maggie isn't joining, and we're only going to do it if Maggie joins. So then off we go to Hilltop, and we were at the Oceanside for like 60 seconds, and I still don't know why Oceanside was even introduced in the first place on The Walking Dead, other than just to pad out, season 7 and 8 and waste time, because they just haven't been used at all. They've been really underutilized on this show. We finally go back to Oceanside this episode. We're there for a minute and we're off. So it just seems really pointless. Whilst the characters are traveling to Hilltop, Aaron accompanies Hornsby in a vehicle, I believe. And Hornsby is basically losing his shit. Hornsby just doesn't like being embarrassed in front of Pamela. That's the impression I get. And he's saying to Aaron, oh, how did you not know that Maggie wouldn't sign this agreement? What are you doing? And, just kind of taking it out on Aaron. But what I really liked was that Aaron doesn't take any shit. He doesn't give a fuck. He says to Hornsby, oh, what do you want me to do? It's not my problem. I'm not a mind reader. I didn't know that Maggie wasn't going to sign this agreement. And I really like that, because I get the impression that Hornsby isn't used to people talking back to him. If Hornsby was to shout at someone at the Commonwealth, they'd probably shit themselves and fall in line and go, sorry, and take the blame. Whereas Aaron's like, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, fuck you. And I really like that Aaron stood up for himself and wasn't taking any shit from this dude. Hornsby, Pamela, and the Commonwealth entourage arrive at the Hilltop, and then Pamela decides to go off on her own with Maggie and go hunting with her so the two can have a chance to bond and have a little chat. Now, I've said some pretty shitty stuff about Pamela so far in my reviews covering this season, and admittedly, I think that some of that has been based on assumptions that I've made and perhaps, preconceived biases that I already have, and some of it has been based on some of the behaviour that I've seen her exhibit so far this season. But in this episode, she comes off as being okay, dare I say it, quite likeable. I mean, she's obviously from, an upper class, well-off background, and she's in quite a privileged position, but she doesn't come off as being evil. She just seems like a normal person to me. Obviously, there are people suffering at the Commonwealth, but I don't think she's making these people suffer on purpose. I mean, maybe she's just ignorant to it. Maybe she doesn't understand what, the people below her are going through because she hasn't been through it herself. I don't know, but whatever the reason is, I don't think she's evil. I don't think she wants people to suffer, So yeah, she's okay to me this episode. I don't mind her. She seems to be okay. I think it's easy to criticize Pamela for some of her decisions, but I think that if most of us were in the same position as her, most of us would probably fall foul of doing the same things that she does, I mean, Maggie makes a point to her that, oh, you have a nicer house than everyone else. You have a nicer house and a nicer car. And I get the point Maggie's trying to make here. She's trying to say that, it's not fair because you have it better than the rest of the people at the Commonwealth, right? But think about it this way. If you were in charge of a community, if you had this kind of position, or let's say, I don't know, if you're a prime minister, you're a mayor, you're a leader of somewhere, would you purposely choose to live in the same house as everyone else, choose to live in maybe a rundown house to prove that you're the same as the average Joe and to look the same as everyone else? Or would you use your position to your advantage and live in a nicer house? Most people would choose option 2. Now, that doesn't mean it's right, but I also don't think it's like inherently evil to say, oh, I've got a nice job, so I'm in this position of power, I'm a leader, so I'm going to live in a nice house. I don't think that makes her evil. And I think it's a pretty shitty argument for Maggie to make. And I also think she's been a bit of a hypocrite because Maggie says to her, I want to be someone who people look up to, not someone who people look at because of what I have, right? But the thing is, normally the leader of the Hilltop lives in that nice big house in the middle of the community, and then everyone else, all the workers, kind of live in like their mobile homes, their static homes outside. And, you know, from what I remember back in season 9, I remember Rick visiting Maggie at the Hilltop, and she's kind of sat there in the porch of the big house holding Herschel Jr., which gives me the impression that she lives there, and everyone else lives outside. I don't know, maybe things have changed now because we haven't seen the inside of the Hilltop. Maybe everyone does live in the house now. I mean, I do remember them all living there when the Whisperers attacked. They all kind of moved in there. Or was it the Saviors? Yeah, was it this? I don't know. But I do remember at one point they all lived together. But yeah, I also think it's kind of hypocritical because Maggie's like, oh, I would never live in a nicer house than everyone else. And I was kind of thinking, well, you have done. You have done because you have lived in that big house. So yeah, the kind of argument falls flat to me. I do think there are valid arguments about the inequality at the Commonwealth to be had, you know. I mean, there's a conversation that Mercer and Daryl have where Mercer, he seems to be kind of shocked that Daryl was once a leader at Alexandria because he says to him, oh, what did you do before? You know, how comes you're a leader? What did you do before this all started, before the end of the world? And Daryl says, oh, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter to them either because, you know, they didn't judge him based on his past, based on his qualifications, based on, you know, what kind of job he had. And I think that if Daryl had instead found himself at the Commonwealth after the world went to shit, instead of, you know, hanging around with Rick's group, I don't think he would have realised his potential there. I don't think he would. I think they would have gave him some shit job. I think they would have completely judged him, you know, based on his background, based on his upbringing. And yeah, he would have never became the great leader that we know him to be. So yeah, I think that's a valid argument. But I don't think saying, she lives in a nice house. I think that's a bit of a stupid argument. And admittedly, it may be one that I've made in a past video. I can't remember. Maybe I'm shitting on myself here. But now that I think about it, yeah, I think it's kind of a lame argument. So yeah, Pamela is all right in my opinion. I mean, maybe my views on her will change again as I learn more about her. But based on this week's episode, she seems to be okay. I like that she can also take care of herself. You know, when she shoots a walker, she seems more than capable of looking after herself and seems alright to me. Hornsby, on the other hand, this dude is a slimy bastard because Pamela doesn't seem to be that unfazed that Maggie doesn't want to join the Commonwealth and join part of their pact. She just says, oh, it's a waste of time. I knew it wouldn't work. Let's go home. Whereas, you know, Hornsby's like, no, we need to get them to join. And Pamela says that the only reason he wants that is because he wants to be in charge of these communities. And maybe he wants to do that so he can use these communities to lead a coup against the Commonwealth. I don't know. But I think that if he were to lead a coup against the Commonwealth, I don't think it would be a better place than it is now. I think it would be worse. And Hornsby also explains his vision of the future to Maggie, which I just found to be kind of soulless because he talks about, wouldn't it be great if we could go to Oceanside and have a boat ride there and then go to this community and go to college and, you know, go here and do whatever, go shopping. All right, I'm paraphrasing now, but it just seemed like his view, you know, of the future didn't involve the communities living in peace and living in harmony. His vision just involved, you know, commercialization of everything. Let's have Oceanside just be a tourist attraction. Doesn't matter that people live there. Let's just go there, you know, let's us fat cats go there to have a nice little boat trip, you know. I mean, you could argue that tourism might help Oceanside. That's a whole nother debate. But yeah, he doesn't really seem to care about the people in these communities. That's the impression I get. He just wants to use them, you know, he just wants to use them as commodities. Oh, let's knock down Hilltop and build a shopping mall there. That's what I think he would do if he had the chance to do so, you know. He just, yeah, his vision to me, like I said, it seemed very soulless. And it just seemed to be, right, oh yeah, I can't wait to turn this community into a place where I can go to the movies. And, you know, you might be thinking, oh, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. You know, if you have that opinion, fair enough. But I don't know. I just kind of think that he doesn't care about these people whose homes are there. You know, he's just thinking about what he wants. And I don't trust this guy. So yes, as I've already mentioned, Maggie rejects the Commonwealth's offer. And I've seen some people say, oh, Maggie's so selfish. Why isn't she thinking of her son? What an idiot. But I don't think that's fair. You know, Maggie's been through a lot. I understand why she is skeptical of this organisation, of this group, and why she doesn't want them to join. I don't think that's very fair to, you know, say Maggie's an idiot for not joining the Commonwealth. Diane, however, disagrees, and her and a couple of red shirts, they decide to leave Hilltop. And yeah, I guess, you know, this is up for debate. What do you think? Let me know if you agree with Diane or if you agree with Maggie. But this got me thinking, you know, how many people now, how many names characters are actually left at Hilltop? Because the only people I can think of are Maggie, Elijah, Herschel, and Lydia. 4 people. Now, there obviously must be more people living there, but The Walking Dead is still very bad at the moment at showing a sense of scale with these communities. You know, I want to see more extras at the Hilltop. I want to see it look like an actual place. I mean, even Alexandria, when Pamela went there, it was kind of dead. It felt deserted apart from Aaron and like 2 extras. And we're continuously told that the Commonwealth is 50,000 strong, yet we only see the same streets every episode. It doesn't seem like a community that has 50,000 people. It doesn't seem that big, you know? And I don't know whether this is because of budget constraints or because of COVID or because of both, but yeah, The Walking Dead just isn't doing good enough. It's not doing a good enough job in making these communities feel like actual big communities. They just feel like, you know, they're inhabited by like 5 people. So last thing I want to mention is that Zeke gets his treatment for his tumor. Much to his surprise, he thinks he's just going in for a checkup, and then Tommy tells him, "Nope, this is a pre-op check, and tomorrow we're going to take your tumor out." He does find out that the reason why he's moved up the list is because of Carol, and at first he's kind of upset because he's like, "Oh, it's not fair. Other people are going to suffer." And Carol says to him, "Well, what do you want? Well, you know, do you want to die?" And again, these are arguments that I've made when this was first brought up. I can understand both people's points of view, so I don't really want to talk about it at length. I think they both had their valid points. You know, it's a difficult discussion. Who's right, who's wrong, who knows? But I think the thing that shocked me the most was that for some reason, I didn't expect the Commonwealth to charge people for medical procedures. Maybe it's because I'm British. You know, maybe it's because we have the NHS. You know, I didn't expect them to be like, "Here's your bill for having your tumour out." Because Ezekiel makes a point of saying that, "Oh, my medical bills now, they've all been wiped. You know, I've got no debt. They've all been wiped clean." And yeah, I just thought that was a bit shocking to me because I don't even know, does Ezekiel even have a job? I mean, we saw him at the Halloween event with like this little petting zoo, but I don't know if that was a one-off. You know, I don't know if he does actually work somewhere in a petting zoo because we haven't seen it. So if he doesn't work, how could he afford it? You know, or is he too ill to work at the moment? I don't know. I mean, this kind of leads into a bigger point that I want to make. You know, that being that I don't feel like the show is doing a good enough job of explaining the Commonwealth's laws and policies, you know. I mean, it could be that the Commonwealth offers help to those who aren't able to afford medical, you know, aren't able to afford their medical bills. Maybe there's some help for that. You know, is there a welfare state at the Commonwealth? Do unemployed get benefits? Do people who are sick get benefits? You know, what is the taxation like? What is the cost of living there? I just think these things need to be explored more, and okay, it probably wouldn't make for, you know, engaging TV if we just see characters listing off laws and policies, but the point I'm trying to make is that the show at the moment is trying to talk about inequality and how unfair things are at the Commonwealth and how unfair the monetary systems are and etc., right? But we don't know enough. We don't know enough about the laws. We don't know if people get unemployment benefits. We don't know if the sick get help. We don't know if people get help looking for jobs. We don't know if people get help with their medical procedures. You know, a lot of what I've been saying, you know, since I've been reviewing 11B, a lot of the things I've been saying, my opinions, has been based on assumptions that I've made on very limited evidence, you know, on only a couple of pieces of dialogue. I mean, I think it's fair to assume that the Commonwealth probably doesn't have these systems in place and probably doesn't help people if they're unemployed, but we don't know that. We don't know that, and I just think we need to know more. We need to know more. If you're going to have your show like focused on inequality and critiquing these things, you need to explain the policies a bit more. You need to explain the laws of the community a bit more. You can't just have it done in a half-assed way and then go, this is unfair, because we don't know enough about it. We don't know enough about it, you know? Yeah, I just think if you're going to go down this route of, you know, trying to critique like politics and critique the economy and all this kind of stuff, then you've got to give your viewers more information about it. You've got to give your viewers more information about it, because all we know is that there's money at the Commonwealth. That's all we know. That doesn't really explain a lot, you know. That leaves a lot to our imagination. That leaves a lot to assumptions, and that could mean that we end up saying the wrong thing, that I end up forming the wrong opinion. So I think The Walking Dead needs to sort this shit out. So that's about all I have to say for it. I mean, I know I'm ending the video on a rather negative, a negative point here, but overall, I did like this episode. Overall, I think the Commonwealth arc has been very strong. I think 11B has been very good so far. Certainly better than 11A. Far better than 11A. I enjoyed this episode. Like I said, there are things that need to be improved going forward. Whether they will or not, I don't think so, unfortunately. I don't think they will, cover these things as in depth as I'd like them to. But yeah, I thought this episode was good. I think Lance Hornsby is quickly becoming one of my favourite characters left on the show. I actually liked Pamela this episode. I'm glad we learnt more about her. I'm glad to see Hilltop again. Even though I am a bit annoyed at the lack of scale in the communities. But yeah, overall, it was another solid episode. It was a solid follow-up to episode 11. I enjoyed it, and so far I'm enjoying the Commonwealth arc. I think that this is probably the best The Walking Dead's been since season 9, in my opinion. I'm really enjoying this part of the show so far. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of this episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know. And I will be reviewing episode 13 very soon. So thank you for being patient with me. You know, I've had a couple of weeks off with my surgery. Thank you for being very patient with me. And yeah, thank you for letting me give me the chance to catch up. And let me know what you think, and I shall see you all very soon. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you to my best buddies. Thank you to my best buddies. Thank you to my best buddies for giving me some money.